Welcome back to Rooted and Refined. What you just saw are some cuttings that I have rooted or am in the process of rooting, and I'm going to show you how to root them in water as I've done here, and the second step, once they get those roots, what to do with them after that. So I'm going to get you set up and we'll talk a little bit more about what today's project is going to entail. Okay, so what we have here is a tomato plant that my husband accidentally weed whacked down yesterday when he was cutting the grass. So he put it in some water and I'm going to show you what we're going to do with it. And then I've got some salvia. Now I noticed this was broken yesterday off of the main plant. So I have already prepared it to root. And I've got a lantana here that I have already rooted. You can see just by putting it in some water, I was able to grow a whole other plant. Gotta love free plants. And then this is a different salvia. This is that kind of reddish salvia. This was the purple blue one that also broke off. And you can see, let me get you up better. Beautiful roots on it. So we've made two whole plants just by putting that cutting in some water. So let me show you how I did that with this. So yesterday, so I'm experimenting. This is more of a hardwood cutting. I'm not as optimistic about this, but I can show you. I'm going to take this one off. Typically when your stem is a little bit more green like this one, you're going to have better luck. So I'm just going to take that stem off and then I cut it at a leaf node. But you want to get your cutting, you want to cut it where you expect the roots to come out, right around a leaf node where these leaves are. So I'm going to cut it right there, and then we're going to take off all of these leaves. We don't want these leaves to be in the water because they will rot. Now, I do want to keep a couple of leaves on this because the plant still needs to get some energy. So we're going to take all of these off. We don't want to put too much energy like up here. I can just cut this where it's going to flower. I don't want the plant to put energy into producing a flower. I want it to put energy into producing roots. So that's how I'm going to leave it. I'm going to put it right in here and just leave it. Now this one, I was telling you, where it's more brown, it's less likely to root depending on the plant. That is not true for all plants, but depending on the plant. I don't expect this to root here, but I'm just experimenting with it. I have enough here that I think are going to root. But that's how you do it. That's how you can get free plants. This one, I took all the leaves off and did leave the flowers on. And it was successful. Granted, this one does have leaves on it, but I left the flowers on those as well. So let me show you again. Now I left a lot of leaves on this one. We could stand to take a couple more off. But you can see I cut it where a leaf node is and then removed the bottom leaves so that they wouldn't be in the water, and then just put it in the water. It'll take a couple weeks. I probably did these, I'm going to say maybe 3 weeks ago. The lantana was probably the same 2-3 weeks ago. Let me move this aside and I'm going to show you this tomato. I'm going to teach you something else with tomato plants if I can find one. Okay, here's one right here. You see where this growth right here is growing in between these two stems? This is called a sucker. You can also root those suckers. I don't. I tend to have too many tomato plants as it is each year, so I do not root the suckers. But let me show you. So like right here, this little guy right here, if we, it's actually, this actually looks like it might have been a sucker. Looks like there was a branch here and then our main stem here. So let's take this off. And just like we did with those other ones, we're going to take the bottom leaves off, and I'll get a smaller container, but that would go in the water just like that until it grows roots. Now, I'm doing these in water. You can do it in soil as well. I like to root things in water because I can very easily check in on them and see if I've gotten roots. All of your cuttings will not root successfully. You're going to have a failure rate. So I like to be able to see when I've got roots. But let's see if we take this one off and do the same thing. Take our leaves off. Tomatoes root very easily. Let's see if I can find another sucker. Here's one. You can see a sucker. You see where you've got these two stems and this one in between. So we just take that right off. And we can do that with, we can just take all of these side branches off and root them all. And then if we wanted to, we could just root these too. Now, I will likely not replant any of these tomatoes that root. I will likely just give them away. Like I said, I have so many tomatoes to the point where when my husband told me that he did this, I was not upset at all. I had a tomato plant that was in a bucket that didn't have a drain hole in it, and it was out in the rain. It wasn't doing all that great. It was getting way too much water. So I just took that tomato right out of the bucket and put it right in the spot where this one was. It was not a big deal. And even if I didn't, it's still not a big deal because, again, a lot of these tomatoes, yeah, there's probably going to be a failure rate, but a lot of these are going to root. Tomatoes root so easily. So that's how to get them to root. Let me show you what we do next. All right, I'm back. And so all we have left to do is just pot up our cuttings. I've got some old terracotta pots that are just the perfect size for this. I'm just going to fill them with some soil. This is not any kind of special soil. You maybe can catch on camera. It does have some peat in it to help retain moisture, but these are going to be inside in a nice bright windowsill. So I will very easily be able to keep an eye on them and make sure they are getting the moisture that they need. So I'm not concerned about any kind of special soil. All right, so it's just as easy as taking out our cutting and getting that root deep enough. Probably would have been helpful if I had moistened the soil beforehand to help it stay where I need it to stay, but it's just as easy as getting this cutting down in the soil and backfilling it with more dirt. All right, so this will go inside in a nice bright window. It will not get direct sun. I do want to acclimate it before I put it in bright sunlight, but we'll keep it in that nice bright window and watch it to make sure it stays nice and moist. Not too much water, just enough to make sure that those roots still continue to develop. Let's put this guy here, and then let's do another one. Let's also think about what lesson we can tie back to the garden with this. So these plants were not, I did not intentionally cut any of these plants. These plants were broken. I know that sometimes when my dog's ball goes into the garden, she eagerly runs to get it and can break branches, which is likely what happened to some of these salvia. The ones yesterday, though, that I just started to root were actually from wind. This salvia is actually fairly brittle, and some wind actually took that big branch off of the main plant. Sometimes life does that, doesn't it? Sometimes when we think we're just trucking along and thriving and everything's going well, something unexpected happens and literally can cut us down. But just because life throws unexpected things at us doesn't mean that that's the end. Sometimes we can grow new roots and figure out how to thrive, maybe in a different place. It's amazing what the garden teaches us, isn't it? How so much of it ties back to life. Comment below and tell me what your garden has taught you recently. What have you learned from your garden that you've been able to apply to life? That's going to do it for us today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay rooted, stay refined, and I'll see you soon.